have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop.
And like all of you, we woke up to a nightmare on Sunday morning. The news from Orlando that we've been obviously has dominated the news all week, and we're here to sort it out with you today if we can. A nightmare that has not ended. But joining us are some great people who we hope can help us sort through it. We have Michelagelo Signorile, who is at Sirius XM Radio and the author of It's Not Over, meaning our movement is not over. We have not gotten all the way there. Jennifer Louise Lopez is the executive director of Everything Transgender in NYC. And also joining us is Xorje Olivares, who is a writer and reporter, and you wrote an article for Out Magazine right after this called My Queer Latino Heart Aches for Orlando Victims.
Now, we are taping this on Wednesday afternoon of the week of the massacre. There will be events happening between the time we're taping and the time people see this, so we just want the audience to know that if things have transpired since Wednesday evening, that's why we're not referring to it. For instance, the president will be in Orlando tomorrow as we tape, and presumably funerals will be happening, and who knows what the crazy politicians and preachers will be doing. But situating this as Wednesday evening, I want to just go around and get a few words from each of you first before we plunge into conversation to hear your first reactions and thoughts and what you think is important here.
I think that for all of us, it was so shocking. I think it was hard for us to really kind of gather our thoughts as to what we should do, how we should respond. And I would like to see us now really take control of this story and how it's being played out, particularly in the media, because I think early on, you know, none of us really knew details, and we saw a complete kind of erasure going on in the media about what this establishment was to the LGBT community. There weren't even reports that it was an LGBT or gay club at first. There was a rush to talk about ISIS and international terrorism, and really not talk about homophobia. And I think we have, after we kind of gathered ourselves together, started to really get that out there and look at the hate in this country and the history of attacks on LGBT spaces. But it's taken a while, and I think we really need to push that forward.
Jennifer?
Yeah. When I heard about it, I was extremely shocked. Actually, my father, who hasn't talked to me or called me in 5 years since I've come out as a transgender woman, called me that morning and told me what was going on, and I didn't even know what had gone on. I continued to eat, and I just sat there, you know, for about a good 5 minutes before, you know, I'm like, you know, I need to take some action and do something, and that's when I started calling people and getting press release out and helping to try to organize some type of rally on Sunday. And we did do, on Sunday night, we did do a march throughout New York City. TNYC started the march and went through it. Unfortunately, 4 people were arrested. 1 person was sent to Bellevue Hospital Psych Ward. During that march, the NYPD chased us with horses, basically barged us with horses on the sidewalks.
Wow. On a night like that?
On a night like that, yes. And it was very nasty of the NYPD to come after us like that.
They have a long history of that. We could go into that at some length. I was asked at the rally on Sunday night at Stonewall, have you ever experienced violence, anti-lesbian violence? I said only from the police.
Oh, wow.
Xorje.
So I woke up late Sunday morning because my friends and I had gone out the night before. So we went to a club the way these people had gone to a club to enjoy ourselves. So when my friend texted, she said, "Did you hear what happened in Orlando?" And I said, "Yeah, that poor girl from The Voice who was shot."
Yes.
And she said, "You need to turn on the news." So I got out of bed and I immediately went to the news, and that's when CNN was saying it was Latin night. And once he said it was Latin night, I was beside myself, because it literally was a scenario that could have played out in my own life, where people my age were out having a good time, and then this is what happened to them. So I spent literally 4 hours just in front of the TV trying to process what it all meant, and just how this could happen in 2016, even though we know that as much as we want to assume that America is this accepting place for everybody within the LGBT umbrella, it's really not. And this was a testament to that.
And as Mike talks about LGBT erasure in this, the Latino erasure in this has been, I think,
it's been
unbelievable.
obscene.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was, when I was trying to watch all the news and see what was going on, I said the one thing that news outlets need to be doing is they need to be including the word either gay or LGBT, because people need to know that we were the targets.
Yeah.
And then once they started saying there was Latin night, and then finally when they started releasing the names of the victims, and they were predominantly Latino names that sounded like mine, that just reminded me of people that I knew or I grew up with. And the fact that not many people are saying Latino in this entire discussion is what's incredibly frustrating and incredibly...
And also, it was also from my understanding, it was also transgender night. The flyers that they had out featured two drag queens, and drag people are considered transgender people, and also transsexual people were there as well. So it was specifically towards Latino transgender people, as well as there were a lot of gay people, gay men that were there as well.
It was an amazing mix of people, I thought.
Yeah.
And I want to point out how it was so easy to determine that. And in fact, I think a lot of us on Twitter, I was on Twitter right away, and we really organized like an army of people on social media to, particularly with the New York Times and CNN, get the word out. It was very easy. When they were saying initially 20 people have been killed in a nightclub, and they were already talking about ISIS and international terrorism, but they had no evidence, right? So they knew what their narrative, what they wanted it to be. And people were writing me and saying, "Do you know what this club?" People from Florida were writing and saying, "You know what this club is?" And I went to the Facebook page. Now, if you're a journalist at the New York Times or CNN, you would go to the Facebook page, and if you go to that Facebook page of the club, you know immediately it's LGBT. You see drag queens and transgender people possibly in the pictures. You see what night it is. It is Latin night. You see that it's Latino. So they didn't want that. They didn't want that part of the story because it wouldn't fit there. They were already talking about the Bataclan nightclub in Paris. So they wanted to talk about this as an act of an attack on you know, quote unquote, all of us, right? And diminish the target.
Well, one of the ways we were drawn in the beginning was when the mother of Christopher Leninen got on television. She's the one who said his boyfriend has been killed in there, Juan Guerrero, and we have a picture of them. He has been killed, and I don't know what has happened to my son. And she was an emotional kind of center. She was on the Today Show. The next day, she still didn't even know if her son was dead or not.
There they are.
There's this couple, and if you read through the list of, and we will provide this in our email when we send it out, if you read through the stories and the list here, there were many couples who were there with each other. These guys were about to they've been going together for 2 years. They were about to get married. Now they're going to be buried together. So it really drew people in, and we could talk about, you know, a lot of the individuals there. But that I think started to focus people on who the hell was inside and who suffered from this.
I think, I mean, we're all in the media. You know, I'm a journalist. You guys are on radio. You guys do TV, and we all know that, you know, sometimes certain topics don't bring in a certain audience that you would want. So I think that this is the particular reason why the media chose to say, hey, look, this is ISIS, and that's the focal point of it.
I think the focus on ISIS was completely political. I think it was driven by the right-wing politicians who immediately insisted that that was the storyline. We're in the middle of a presidential campaign where the Republicans and the right wing want to make this a story, you know, Trump all day long, radical Islamic terrorists keep the Muslims out of the United States.
Disgusting.
And to me, and I want to hear from each of you, my read of this situation is lone guy, not a, the Paris attack was a planned group attack that was meant to induce terror in the city and in Europe generally, I'm sure. This is one mentally disturbed, I think, guy. Now, I'm making my own assumptions, but everything I've seen or heard tells me that this was a tortured individual who was acting on his own conflicting impulses. I do believe the self-loathing, internalized homophobia line, but whatever, that he decided to do this on his own and was looking for some kind of credibility by attaching himself to ISIS. I just watched the movie on Logo, Out of Iraq, about the gay couple, the Iraqis who struggled to come together. And it is the most poignant story of how difficult it was for them to find each other and be openly gay or not openly gay in Iraq, but now escaping. I think this guy wanted to legitimize himself as a man, as a legitimate human being. All the stories of his racism and misogyny and homophobia to his fellow employees as a security guard. I think it was all about that, and the fact that the media and politicians leap to this ISIS terrorism explanation is infuriating to me.
Yes, and I think that in fact why he did that is because they would leap to it. We've given power to ISIS. We've given them power, and this has given power to this group of people who are being diminished land-wise and losing influence. Nonetheless, he knew that if he latched on to that, it would give him a higher purpose. He would be someone in the media who would be focused on much bigger. If it was simply a guy who went and attacked LGBT people in a bar, just as we saw with the man from LA Pride who was going to Pride, that story diminished, right? So it gave him a higher purpose. Ultimately, it does give more power to ISIS. They then claim responsibility for it, but I totally agree with you. If you look at all of the evidence, there's a history of homophobia, there's a history of racism. He's had colleagues say he's said things about black people, he said things about Jews, misogyny, abuse toward his wife.
He sat with a coworker and said, I want to kill black people.
That's right.
So his coworker turns him in just to the boss, and
well, the FBI got onto him.
No, not over that.
But no real history of any involvement with.
That did not go to the authorities.
There's no real history of any involvement with any radical extreme group. That came later.
Just that he belonged to a mosque where another guy who went off to Syria and did some things, and that got him investigated. But,
Wasn't he investigated 2 times?
Sorry?
He was investigated 2 times.
Yes.
Yeah,
But he was almost bragging to people that he was in Al-Qaeda, and then the FBI came and investigated him and realized that it wasn't
because
true.
all his stories were contradictory about who he was allied with in Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah or something. Everybody he cited was fighting with each other.
And they did monitor him after that. They tapped his phone. They looked at his postings. They, looked at what he did, and he didn't do anything else
They
then.
obviously didn't watch him go to the gun store and buy all the guns and ammunition.
Exactly.
And that's what's scary.
Or stop
Supposedly
him
with
from
his
getting a
wife,
gun.
and then having the wife have that information that this was possible, that she may have known and may have prevented this attack for whatever reason. I guess.
Well,
she
what's
did not.
your read about the wife? Because I have my own little theory.
The second wife.
The second wife, because the first wife is the one who said that he was incredibly violent to her. The second,
And gay.
and gay.
Maybe.
So, according to the first wife,
Yeah.
I don't know. To
Gay
Mike's
tendencies.
point, to Mike's earlier point about the fact that they latched onto this Islamophobia, ISIS narrative, it completely erased the fact that this was a hate crime against LGBT people. That they were specifically targeted, and they were the ones who were essentially eliminated because of this guy's biases. But I think that the part that I just can't wrap my head around is the fact that there's all these people who are coming out, like this news reporter who said, I got a phone call from this guy in the middle of it saying, I'm with ISIS, I'm the shooter, whatever that is. And also the fact that he called the police and supposedly said the exact same thing. So I don't know if he himself thought that he was doing the work of an organization that had no acknowledgement of who he was, or if he was using it to get the attention that he desired by attacking the people he desired to
I
attack.
think building his credibility as a man. I think a lot.
What better way to do it than with guns?
Exactly.
Like,
and
what better display of masculinity
I've
than...
heard people talk about what we often call testosterone poisoning. That this is someone who was so violent to his wife, so violent in his language, had went and got the guns and did this horrible massacre. And to me, that just reeks of someone who is trying to establish his credibility and masculinity. And I think the calm he felt or displayed was because he had finally, by doing this, resolved his torture.
Well, we'll get into that. But I mean, a lot of this goes way back with him.
Dr. Ann will analyze.
Well, we'll go. But I mean, there's even classmates from grade school who say on 9/11 we were watching the buildings come down, and he was the kid cheering. While that was what that was going on.
Well, but
so I mean that.
Well, and then there's his father,
yes.
who
Yes.
has given interviews very comfortably, very casually, very immediately, very available, and really didn't seem like a distraught parent. If your child had just massacred several dozen people,
and you had lost your son.
and you lost your son, why would you be so available, so comfortable, and really kind of saying, well, he wasn't a bad guy. He just.
And he certainly wasn't gay.
We're sorry for what happened, but not really sort of. And then he did say, of course, that he didn't need to kill homosexuals because they'll be punished
By God.
anyway by God.
let me, the way this played out in the media, and I'd like to go back to some of that. We had the immediate leap to ISIS and terrorism. We had the initial press conference where we had all the law enforcement and politicians and an imam and not a single gay person. And, most people not saying the words LGBT or gay or Latino or anything, just ISIS, ISIS, ISIS. And then when the story shifted some and we began to put these details together, did any of you have any sense that, now the media is going to start blaming us and this story will diminish, or we're going to, this is not going to be as important now that it's not focusing so much on ISIS?
I think if there's confirmation that he was in fact gay, then I think the conversation is going to change about, not that we brought it on ourselves, but that one of your own is the reason why this happened and not because of radical Islamic terrorism or whatever that point is. But to what you were saying before about these politicians who are coming out and refusing to acknowledge that this was against LGBT people, when I was watching the news for those 4 hours or 5 hours and Rick Scott came on practically every 10 minutes and refused to say that it was against the LGBT community and kept saying, Governor of Florida, yeah, and Trump supporter, or I think to this day still is. And he just said, this could have been my daughter. Well, this could not have been your daughter.
Right.
Unless your daughter was a lesbian or a transgender woman who was in this club, this could not have been your daughter.
From the Dominican Republic.
Exactly. So there's no reason why you continue to make this argument. And then the thing that I thought was most egregious was when Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida, who has since gotten her beat down from Anderson Cooper because of her previous positions, she goes out to say that, the LGBT community, they're our brothers and sisters, and we completely feel for them. Okay, but you didn't feel that way, several months before when you were completely doing everything
Days
you could.
before.
Saying gay marriage would be a harm to society.
Well, there are some, on the politicians, there's some politicians, who have come out and apologized, and this has moved them deeply. I don't know how it's going to move them to do anything differently, but it's
probably not.
Well,
I do want to get back to
Yes.
the question of the stories about him meeting people on apps and going to the bar perhaps dozens of times before.
Including when he was in college, apparently, with friends.
And some friends saying they went out with him to bars, even though no one's come forward who said they had any sexual involvement with him.
Yeah.
And it could be that he was always sort of struggling with this and never really did anything, and this was the ultimate violent reaction. But
and an interest in transgender
yeah,
women.
that's right. There was some discussion of him meeting transgender women on apps as well.
Well, I mean, if he's meeting transgender women, that's not a big deal. I mean, he would still be considered heterosexual. I mean, that's.
But he's maybe, you know, obviously exploring things, whatever. I actually think that it almost, I don't want to say it's a relief, in a sense, and you're worried a little bit about them blaming it on us. I thought it complicates the story for the media and in a troubling way for them, because it's harder for them to keep the focus on, their whole narrative is falling apart from what they started with.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Do you talk about gun control? Do you talk about the fact that Republicans are blocking legislation to make sure that people like him don't get guns? Do you talk about the issues of masculinity and how society views masculinity? Do you talk about the fact that, I don't know, there's just so many different narratives that can pull out of this.
Why did he pick Latin night?
Well, there's also the component of the transgender community and everything that we're facing from the American Families Association. 4 days before that, everyone thinks that there was a bombing at Target in Illinois, and then somewhere in Illinois, and. The fact of the matter is that it wasn't a bombing. It was a lady that was mixing her methamphetamine in the Target bathroom, and a little explosion went off. But because of the policies at Target and because of the right-wing side, the right wing decided to use that story and start cheering. Oh yeah, we bombed Target. We bombed Target. Well, that didn't happen. And to me, it's very ironic that 4 days later, this shooting happens on a transgender Latina nighttime. Before that, we saw the American Families Association writing this nasty letter that went out viral, saying that we are men dressed in women's clothing, and that we're going to rape children, we're going to molest wives, and that you have to protect your wives from us. Then we had a pastor come out and say that you should go out and kill transgender people. And then we also had a person running for sheriff in Denton, Texas, that told people to go out and hurt transgender people.
Are they put on watch lists when they say these things?
Heavens no.
Well, I mean, the American Families Association, as of now, should be on a terrorist list, because I'm sorry, I think that this all stems from the American Families Association and their hatred towards us transgender people, and that this would have been the perfect time for him to just steam up and say, you know what, this is the perfect time for me to go out and do what I want to do.
I would just say, sort of to the point of Mike's book, that it's not over. The fact that the Southern Poverty Law Center has named more hate groups as of this year. I think there's 48 now, and it's risen. I don't know the percentage, but it's risen over the past 5 or 6 years. Then you know that when you have people like this, and you have pastors, and you have people who are associated with the religious right, making these comments that can be deemed very violent towards members of the LGBT community. To see them all say our thoughts and prayers, and how now that's become this joke that
the same people who said bring a gun to the bathroom.
Well, some of them,
because there might be a transgender
yes,
person.
there is a lot of that, and it is heinous, and you know, we could spend the rest of the show on Trump, but I do think that the storyline should be where this hatred comes from. Where is the license to go into an LGBT, Latina night and shoot people? And I think it is the general ignorance of this country that trans women are being killed one by one on the streets of...
32 in the last year and a half.
Exactly. And hundreds in South America.
And you had an experience with it a couple of months ago.
I've been beaten 2 times this year alone. I was brutally beaten on a train. I ended up having to go to emergency eye surgery. And then one night when I was talking to a guy who had called me over, he punched me, and his one punch, if there was more, I don't know, made me black out and I woke up in the hospital.
But the press doesn't want to talk about that, and
No.
they don't want to talk about the hate speech by either politicians or religious leaders. You can go on YouTube right this minute and see preachers this week saying it's too bad they only got 49 of them. They should have gotten more.
One in Sacramento, one in Arizona.
Yes, and to me, the press is missing the larger picture. They're missing the violence against trans women. They're missing the men who get seduced on Grindr and taken home and killed. They're missing the people who are getting beaten up on the street. They're missing what's going on all over the world with this kind of violence. And by erasing us in the initial reports, by going to this ISIS obsession, they are missing what the real story is, which is the perpetration of all this violence, physical, verbal, emotional, from families, from friends, from strangers, from the religious community, from politicians against LGBT people.
None of the reporters knew any of the history of massacres of gay people over the years. The most famous one, and probably, I guess, the biggest one, well, of course, the biggest one was the AIDS crisis, which, of course, they ignored for forever. I mean,
genocide.
That, absolute genocide. I mean, they could have linked that to homophobia. But in New Orleans, at the Upstairs Lounge in 1973, 32 people burned in a firebombed bar because they were from the Metropolitan Community Church.
And here's the good news in that context. Families refused to acknowledge their children in that fire, refused to claim their bodies. And there were jokes made about burying ashes in fruit jars. Now what we do see this week is families loving their children, mourning their children, and that is so heartwarming.
And people genuinely across the country, let's not forget, connecting to this and really lending their support in a way that we certainly didn't see.
But talking about families, in the transgender community, we have a 57% family rejection rate. And as I've said a couple times already, this was Latin Transgender Night. Most of the names that I'm reading are male names. Now, transgender people do have a problem, particularly Florida, do have a problem with being able to change the ID. So a lot of these people that may be transgender, we will never know because probably their families came and just recognized them as the gender that they are not, and buried them throughout what we call their dead name, which would have been probably on their ID. So we have to remember that. So I mean, our families really embracing their transgender children? I don't think so.
The thing that I wrote about this in this article for Out magazine about which version of their child are they grieving? Are they grieving the child that they knew, the one who, for all intents and purposes, before they went into this club was straight, or is it, the gay child that they did know and was out before they unfortunately passed away in this event? The thing that I guess hit me the most was I didn't come out to my Mexican American family until I was 22. And
how old are you now? I'm
28 now. So the idea that a lot of the people who passed away in this attack are younger than I was when I came out. You just have to wonder whether or not they were completely out, because there are a lot of different things, specifically when you have the Latino identity, that would keep you in the closet, whether it be faith and religion, in my particular case Catholicism, or something like machismo, which is predominant in the Latino community but is present in all other forms of racial and ethnic identities. So if all those came into play, that could have kept a good majority of the people who were at that club from being their full, whole selves to their families. So that's the thing that I'm most worried about, that these people are finally coming out, but coming out in the most horrible way possible, because it's definitely not on their terms.
Well, and one of them who survived, Isaiah Henderson, his mother was killed. She was there. She had 11 children. Her name was...
she was considered the mother of the bar.
Brenda Lee Marquez McCool. She was 49 years old, mother of 11 kids, two-time cancer survivor. That's, I mean, so it was a mix. It was such a mix in that place.
Which I found heartwarming. The stories of the mix of people and how warm and welcoming that bar was.
I want to throw out another issue that I think plays into this and needs to be focused on, and it's the Muslim bashing we've seen in this country. and how that has affected Muslims in this country and certainly around the world. I mean, with Donald Trump calling for a ban on Muslims, and of course what we've seen for years now, when you look at all of these individuals who have engaged in these attacks that are lone wolves, the attempted bomber in Times Square, the Boston bombers, this guy as well, they're struggling within a culture that is demonizing them as well. They're trying to come to terms with, you know, navigating in this culture as people of color, as Muslims, and they're being bashed and attacked and vilified. And, you know, you heard President Obama saying what we need to be doing is connecting with people. And we know that even when we're dropping bombs, you know, in Pakistan and elsewhere, we're destroying families, and people turn to violence and terrorism to act out against us. So we have to also consider that. And then why did he then decide it was LGBT people, Latino people, that he was going to take it out on?
Right. I was encouraged when we gathered on Sunday night, and we just put the word, 3 people, including Bill Baldwin, our associate producer, we just got together, said pick a time, put it out on the internet, and, you know, over 1,000 people showed up at the Stonewall on Sunday night that day because we needed to be with each other. And a gender non-conforming Muslim woman got up to speak and spoke very well, and some older guy, crank, you know, started screaming, "It is about Islam, it is about Islam," screaming at her. And the crowd shouted, "No hate, no hate, no hate." They stopped it. And there is that spirit in the community. You know, this was not guided by leaders. That was done by the crowd, and I was very encouraged by that.
Can you tell us more about the march on Sunday? Where was it, and what happened?
So after the service at Stonewall Inn, probably about 150 to 200 of us marched over to Union Square. We took over 6th Avenue on the streets, 7th Avenue on the streets, and then walked over to 14th Street into the Union Square. We held a soapbox there up until about 9:20, 9:30. At 9:20, 9:30, we started a march. Probably about 150 of us went all the way down to all the way up to Columbus Circle. We took over 7th Avenue. Around 7th and 39th Street, the NYPD came charging at us with horses and brought those horses on the sidewalks where we're legally allowed to be on the sidewalk. I don't understand why horses were on the sidewalk. And they were spinning the horses around. They were almost hitting people with the horses. They were grabbing people. 4 people were arrested. 1 person was sent to Bellevue Hospital.
They did that at the Matthew
That's
Shepard
exactly
demonstration
what
in
happened.
1997.
Exactly what happened at the Matthew Shepard march that attempted to go down 5th Avenue from 59th to Madison Square Park. Absolutely no need to interfere with it, but the cops at the beginning arrested all the leaders, created chaos, trampled people with horses, and they want control. They cannot bear the thought that we would exercise our First Amendment right to assemble and have what could have been a very quick, peaceful march.
I think that they were very upset because I do a lot of these rallies, I do a lot of these marches, organizing and whatnot. And one thing that I tell people, you know, if you're going to take the streets, you know, which I don't tell people to do that, but if they want to do that, then that's what they want to do. And if they're going to take the streets, then once you see the police, you got to run onto the sidewalk. And I think they were very upset that we did that. That we just, you know, we disassembled, you know, and they didn't have that. All these people on the street that, you know, that they could go after and arrest all these people. And I think that they were very upset, and that's why we saw the horses on the sidewalk.
Well, a lot of the Martin Luther King marches in the South, they would abide and be on the sidewalk, obey the traffic rules, and they would still get the crap beat out of them. But you did also have the Trans Latina March that was pre-planned on Monday night, was it? Yes, Monday night.
Yes.
And that was in Queens and Jackson Heights, and that's, you know, it's one of Make the Road does this. Trans Latinos marching on the sidewalk all through Jackson Heights. I mean, you're warming out 50 blocks basically of a march. But I mean, and then, you know, neighbors cheering, neighbors staring sometimes, but getting power. And of course, the testimony from the trans women who were there was, we have to watch ourselves the rest of the time. We have to, you know, hide basically, and the police are the ones who will pick us up, charge us with prostitution for just walking around on the street as trans women. I mean,
or you
this
get,
is 2016.
Yeah. Or you get, such as I was told by Daniel Drum, you get one transgender woman that wanted to report the fact that she had been molested or hurt or whatnot, and she went down to the police department to the precinct to do a report. Daniel Drum called the precinct beforehand and got assurance that, hey, this transgender person is coming in, treat her with respect and whatnot. When she got to the door, the story is the desk cop said, "Are you a prostitute?"
Right.
That was the first question that came out of the cop's mouth. The transgender person
and they straightened that one out. But I said to Danny Drum, who's the council member out there, why can't you get justice for these folks? And he said part of it is immigration issues for a lot of them.
Yes.
And most of this rally was in Spanish. A lot of them are very recent immigrants as well. So, well.
Jorge, you're involved with the church. The Catholic Church specifically. What's your read these days on the rhetoric from the church and the actions? We certainly haven't heard anything from the Pope about this.
Well, actually, he did make a well, Vatican issued a statement.
He condemned the attacks,
but not
Vatican
mentioning
statement,
us.
but not mentioning the fact that it was LGBT people. So it's been. My journey through Catholicism has been very interesting in the sense that, grew up in South Texas, heavily Mexican American, was an altar boy for 10 years. My parents were involved with the church. Went to church by myself for 9 years after I left my hometown. And then only now have become a part of this parish that specifically has an LGBT ministry that's a part of it, which we know is incredibly progressive and just not the norm when you talk about the Catholic Church.
You can say what it is.
I'm sorry?
The church?
Oh, so the church is called the Church of St. Paul the Apostle, and I became involved because we did this documentary about what it means to be LGBT and Catholic, which was well received for the most part, and we actually, most of the people that were against it were other LGBT people, but that can be another discussion. So within the past year and a half, specifically with my involvement with the church, trying to see what we can be doing in terms of getting leadership within the church to talk more about the brothers and sisters, and like if you say all are welcome, how much do you mean by that statement? So we...
They're not doing your weddings yet.
No, of course not.
Well,
and they probably never will, and I think that's...
They used to 1,000 years ago.
I know. But the fact that, as of now, that I've yet to hear of, Cardinal Dolan, who's the Archbishop of New York, has yet to say anything about this. And
I believe that.
We barely got him to let us in the St. Patrick's Day parade this year.
I know. So there's parts of it where I'm incredibly frustrated, and then there's parts of it where I think, you know, as the saying goes in the Bible, you know, knock on the door and the door shall be open. Particularly for my involvement with the church, I'm hoping that we're knocking and knocking and that the door will be open, because I would hate for us to have knocked this entire time and then the door open and we're not there. So tonight, as you said, we're filming this on a Wednesday evening. So tonight, our church is actually holding a candlelight vigil for the victims of the attack, and a good portion of the people who are going to be Latino, because we understand the importance of showing that there are LGBT Latinos who are out there who are incredibly impacted by the events.
And I found a tremendous outpouring of anger, especially on Facebook, people expressing themselves. They're just fed up with what churches teach about us at root. Yep. I'm talking about that they're not abandoning anti-gay teachings that teach we're evil, et cetera, and which classify us as bad people, et cetera. And people are furious over this, and they really are demanding of the Pope, of the rabbis, of Islam, you know, stop it.
Well, and it gets back to, and you were pointing to the bar in New Orleans, of course, the history of attacks on LGBT spaces. I wrote a piece in Huffington Post just looking at some of them. If you actually tried to gather all of them, it would probably take a very long time, because there are so many, and so many of them are motivated by attackers who have a religious hatred. There was Eric Rudolph, of course, the Atlanta Olympic Park bomber, and he attacked the Other Side Lounge, 2 bombs, a lesbian bar, and said in court that he did it to attack homosexuality. There was a man and that was in the 90s, there was a man in 2014, just recently, well actually 2013, New Year's Eve in Seattle, set fire to a bar in Seattle. He was a Muslim man. He said that he did it because he wanted to burn these people.
And would
So
have been
you've seen
successful.
it-
There was
yeah.
a guy, I think,
Military guy
who
stopped it.
Extinguished
stopped
it.
it.
We just saw in
Could have burned the whole place down.
Yeah, in Dallas in the fall, people were being attacked as they exited gay bars. Gay men were being attacked and beaten up, and then in the same period, the bars were being vandalized. So there is a history of this and these attacks,
well,
and that has to
I
really
was
be
just
part
going to
of
say,
this.
people know where we are, and they actually come to our community to bash us. You know,
I think that we really need to look at the root of the problem and take care of what the root of this problem is, and I think it has a lot to do with the mega churches down south. I used to belong to a mega church down south when I was a straight heterosexual man, and it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and any given Sunday there was at least 50,000 people and one pastor that was speaking to these 50,000 people, and he would say, wave your hands in the air if we're gonna go cure the gays, you know, and all this nasty stuff. So you have one pastor that has influence over thousands of people, and that was a small mega church. In Texas, we have mega churches that are well over 100,000, hundreds of thousands of people on any given Sunday, and one pastor. We have pastors that are very well known that fly around the United States going to these mega churches that speak about hurting gay people and hurting transgender people, and I think that has a lot to do with it, and unfortunately they're protected by the First Amendment, but we have to get to the root of the problem, and we have to fix that.
I mean, I think we have made some progress in some denominations where, like Cardinal Dolan, they're really reluctant to like lay on the heavy stuff, you know, in terms of the rhetoric, the anti-gay rhetoric. They try to downplay it, even though it's there. You know, it's still there, and this Pope, you know, trying to be Santa Claus and, you know, say nice things and make everybody feel good without changing any doctrine, without allowing any.
That's better than railing against us.
Yes,
but
yes.
still,
So I'm saying that's
Well,
how.
except that it
it
hides the
allows-
fact that none
yes.
of the actions have
it
changed.
allows
And when a Catholic comes out and, you know, gets married or something, they get fired if they work for a Catholic institution.
That's right.
So that's the problem.
And all of this is supported by the hypocrisy of politicians, too, who are out there weeping for us now, but are going right back into Congress and continuing to push these, you know, First Amendment Defense Act for religious freedom, and refusing to pass the Equality Act, and continuing the bathroom bill campaign. And
Let's talk about the
gotten worse.
politicians.
It's gotten worse
Yes.
since this act. I'm looking at my news feed, and towards transgender people, they have just really they're cheering. And when I wrote about the target bombing, the supposed target bombing, they were cheering back then as well 4
Yes.
days ago. I mean, they're just having a blast with this.
well, I think the question is, those people who say those things are always there. Are there more of them now or fewer? We know that the reaction in general from the public, superficially at least, is supportive. So in ways that it wasn't 30 years ago. So have we may find out in November in the election, have we succeeded in containing them as a smaller group, loud but small? Or are they, in fact, powerful and big?
I think it's turned powerful and big, especially, you know, with the bathroom issues that us transgender people are facing. The American Families Association did a really, really good job in brainwashing the general public into thinking that transgender people are going to go in and molest
they're not
children
giving up.
and wives. And I mean, it's just the craziness of it is, if a person wants to go into a bathroom and rape a child or molest a woman, they're going to do that, regardless of whether they're allowed in there or not. They don't need a law saying, hey, look, you can go, you know?
But this is the crazy thing about it, because I think their line now is, we're not against transgender people, we're against the perverts who now have license to cross-dress and attack because we are allowing transgender women into women's restrooms.
And this was all coordinated and planned. And you know from my book, I had gone to their conferences, to the Conservative Political Action Conference, to Values Voter Summit, where all these groups, AFA and Family Research Council, and all of them get together. And I saw them plotting and planning. They knew marriage equality was coming. They hoped it wasn't, but they discussed what they would do and how they would plan to thwart us. And they looked at Roe v. Wade, and they went with that strategy. We need to come up with a way to thwart this win in the way we thwarted abortion. So with abortion, they came up with this partial birth abortion. It was, you know, a fabricated term that the public would not know much about. It made them fearful. It made it sound like they were killing babies. Of course, it's a late-term abortion that is very rare, but it was another way they could keep women, you know, pass laws and keep women from having a right to choose. And even if these laws don't, you know, make it through the courts, it instills the fear. So they're doing it with this now too. And I asked them, what would you do? And they said, well, we'll look at conscience clauses, we'll look at religious liberty laws, quote unquote. The bathroom thing, I think they hit a real, they hit, you know, what they think is a winning strategy. And it was Houston that really sort of told them that because the public really didn't understand it and was confused.
Houston passed a civil rights law that included transgenders,
That's right.
And the whole campaign was based on transgenders.
And they use that in the ads, and that
Big
they
time.
see as their, you know,
Even
sort
when
of
lesbian
partial
mayor.
birth abortion of the queer world. And they have other ones. They have the religious liberties laws. They have the others. So Jennifer's absolutely right. They are bigger, but what they've done is they've figured out a way to do it under the radar and not look like it's so homophobic. They're the victims now, or transphobic, right? They're the victims now, and they have to somehow protect themselves from us asserting ourselves.
And that alone is causing a fear and also causing attacks within the transgender community. Here in New York City, we just saw recently Pearl Love, a transgender woman that was on the New York subway. She was attacked, and she recorded the whole thing. And the lady was sitting there saying, I need to protect my daughter. I need to protect my daughter against people like you. And then the lady paraded around the media days later saying, I don't take it back. I don't take it back. And we're going to actually have a rally on the 5th because the lady's getting off. She's they're going to try to give her anger management for about 4 hours, and then she doesn't get anything else, for attacking a transgender person.
Before we run out of time, we didn't talk about the elephant in the room, Donald Trump, much.
Who is meeting next week in New York City on Tuesday with 400 right-wing leaders, the Family Research Council, the American Family Association. All these people are coming to New York. Jerry Falwell Jr.
Privately. No, not open to media.
No.
So to make a private pact.
Where are they meeting? Do we know yet?
I would imagine it might be Trump Tower. I'm not
400
sure.
people?
We are demonstrating at Trump Tower
Coincidentally.
at 6 o'clock on Tuesday.
6 o'clock Tuesday, Trump Tower.
5th Avenue and 56th Street. We'll be there.
We will.
But,
we hope you'll be there,
I mean,
too.
I was absolutely gobsmacked when he turned on a dime after this incident and he says, the LGBT community, this was an attack on you, I'm going to protect you. Hillary is not. The LGBTs love me, all of that kind of stuff. And we know
I'm
what
best
it is.
for the gays.
The most insulting today, he said, that the LGBT community supports me in my desire to ban Muslims from this country. No data, no polls, no anything. He's just decided that we would ban another minority.
And if everybody in that bar had had a gun,
Yes.
Yes.
But some idiot reporter at the Times reports this as, and he is generally more accepting of gay people than most Republicans. He said he's going to support Supreme Court justices who are going to overturn everything. I mean, the most right-wing judges, they could reinstate the sodomy laws if they wanted to, if he gets enough of them. He's going to rescind all the Obama executive orders. He is going to leave it to the states to discriminate against transgender people, etc. So my question is, do you think...
Caitlyn Jenner can use his bathroom. What are you talking about?
His bathroom. But
celebrity.
Do you think there is any significant portion of our community who will fall for this?
I want to say a few months ago when the debates were first starting, I was invited by a friend of mine to watch the debate. And he said, you should be prepared because one of my friends who's coming, who's also gay, is a Trump supporter. And so as soon as I prepared myself as best as I could, and then it was one of the first times, I think, after Trump had made the Mexicans are rapists and Mexicans are criminals comments. And this Trump supporter, this great gay Trump supporter, just kept saying, I agree with him. I think the border is the most dangerous place in the world. And I said, well, I'm from the border, and I think it's perfectly fine. And he said, well, you're taking this too personally. And, and so I said, well, okay. And then, so he also made another sort of anti-Latino comment. And my takeaway from that is, it's difficult to be LGBT in this country, but it's difficult to be LGBT and Latino, because you recognize that even within the LGBT, specifically the white Gs, that there is a sort of lens in which they view us in terms of not being on the same level and not having valid arguments or valid reactions to anything that's happening around us. So I think that was also one of my biggest concerns with how the story was being portrayed with regards to what happened in Orlando, because by taking away the identity of these people, specifically their Latino identity, which there were other people who were murdered, unfortunately, that didn't.
But the majority were.
But the majority were Latino. So by taking that identity away from them, when we have to fight so hard, even within the LGBT sector of the community, to be that Latino-ness or to exhibit that Latino-ness, is the thing that I find most egregious in this entire process.
It's very hard for those of us who disagree with everything Trump says and are dedicated, self-described progressives to understand the right-wing gaze. But we know they're there. We hear them.
I speak to Trump supporters who are gay. I speak to transgender Trump supporters. I posted a article that I wrote about the danger that Trump is to LGBT equality, and one transgender woman that I know posted it on Facebook and posted it with this message: please read this. Half of the transgender women that I know are voting for Trump.
Well,
so it is happening.
The person voting for Trump is Caitlyn Jenner.
It is happening now.
She's getting educated. She might know.
Whether it will be a lot of people is not is you know.
55% of the American public said they will never vote for him this week.
Right.
I mean, and he's slipping in the polls, thank goodness, and I hope that continues.
But aren't
we're
we
not partisan here.
Aren't we embarrassed that anyone we identify with would vote for him?
We're going to find out how many racists there are in this country. The moment he said the stuff about Muslims and Mexicans, that should have been it for everyone. For everyone.
Right.
And that anyone in our community could not understand and see the attacks on other minorities and connect with that and show solidarity is embarrassing.
Yes.
I think if Donald Trump does become the president, I've heard a lot through the transgender community and also myself, we will be moving to Canada, where we actually, the Prime Minister has put protection laws in for us in Canada.
I'd like to see once, you know, we make this threat every 4 years. I remember Barry Goldwater. So I'll be interested to see whether we follow through on this. At the moment, I would say he doesn't have a chance, but we have 5 months to live through.
Well, I think the way that he responded to Orlando really woke people up across the country.
I thought his treatment of the judge would have woken people up.
Well, I think that began it, and then seeing a crisis that even if people did think it was ISIS, this was a warning sign of how this man would treat this. And I will tell you, a lot of people, at least calling my radio show, even Republicans, were very unnerved that he was attacking the president, even if they don't like the president. They felt
that the president should resign.
In a moment of crisis, you should allow the president to lead. It was very disrespectful.
He has no allegiance to any
one but himself.
Yeah. All right, so we have a couple of minutes. I'd like to talk about plans that we have. You're going to a vigil tonight at the church. We're all going to Trump Tower on Tuesday
at 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock at 56th and 5th. There's talk about gays against guns contingents in pride marches and other events maybe that are anti-NRA.
And there should be a stepped-up fight around the country for the Equality Act. I mean, we're angry, we're rubbed raw. We demand you pass this for everybody in this nation, the Equality Act, which is our federal LGBT rights law.
And it may be the moment to call the bluff of politicians who claim they're on our side now to pass the Equality Act in Congress.
And also to repeal HB2 in North Carolina.
Absolutely. And Trump was in North Carolina last night praising McCrory and promising to raise money for him, the governor, the heinous governor. I was in
Who
Nevada
I
earlier.
hope is going to lose because of HB2
I
as
met
well.
Roy Cooper earlier this week, who's running against him, the Attorney General, who is very much on our side and trying to get rid of HB2.
So other final things in the last minute?
Just that even though my mother called and tried to persuade me not to do it, members of our church will be marching in the Pride Parade as best as we can and making sure that we do our best to...
Your mother's worried about you.
The first thing that my father said when he... So my dad, when I came out, took a few weeks to himself before we had a conversation. I know that's little time compared to other Latinos. But he said, the only reason I'm so worried is because I'm worried for your safety. Sure. And he said the exact same thing after Sunday. And this was the first time that I actually believed that.
And to that point, I think for everybody, pride has taken on new meaning again. Yeah. And I think we all should
I hope so.
come together.
They are
at
bringing
Pride.
survivors of Orlando up to New York to participate in the parade this year.
All right, so we want to end this program with the pictures and names of those who were massacred in Orlando. We have taken this from a local station in Orlando, and we mourn these beautiful human beings who have lost their lives for absolutely no reason at all, and they are martyrs to our causes.
These are people who love being LGBT.
Thank you all for joining us in this difficult time, and thank
Love
all
yourselves.
of you, and we will see you next week. Thank you.